check really quick. This. And we should be good to go. So again, yo, what's up, guys? It's your boy Bernie here, giving you yet another live stream. And today, guys, we've got two topics to talk about. I decided to kind of take a lunch break and decide to talk basketball because it's been a minute since the NBA Finals kind of recap. And we got two interesting stories that kind of popped up, and I didn't really make a video about it, so I decided why not do a live stream about it. So the first topic is, of course, Doc Rivers is officially the head coach of the 76ers. This is a coach coming from Adrian Wojnarowski. This is coming from Sham. This is coming from everybody known to man that reports basketball, and of course, including myself, we're going to be talking about it today. So Doc Rivers has agreed to become the next coach of the 76ers. Obviously, they parted ways, the LA Clippers and him. Rivers was the compromise choice for the 76ers ownership of the 76ers preferred D'Antoni, while Elton Brand preferred Ty Lue. D'Antoni would likely would have become the Philadelphia head coach if, of course, Doc Rivers didn't become available. And I think the biggest story to talk about here is, what are they going to be doing with Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons? Because I think the 76ers ownership and whoever else is involved, Elton Brand, everybody is going to decide right now what is the best thing to do. Is it to trade away Ben Simmons, or is it to trade away Joel Embiid? Because I feel like those two just can't coincide with one another. Because I've talked about this ad nauseum when it comes to Ben Simmons. If he's not going to learn how to shoot the three ball, then I think you need to move away from him and kind of focus on Joel Embiid, because I think what makes Ben Simmons really ineffective is not the ability to drive the paint, to get assists. It's just the ability that he's not at least a threat from shooting the jumper. I mean, that's what makes guys like LeBron James so lethal, and that's why LeBron James is one of the best players in the world, because even though the three-point shot is not his best asset or attribute, he still works on it to a point where he can at least be consistent with it. And right now, Ben Simmons would rather be part of FaZe Clan and playing video games and working on that stuff rather than actually doing his job, which is to be a basketball player and to shoot the three ball. I mean, I think that's kind of my take on it. It may be harsh, it may be rude, but when it comes to Ben Simmons, when you're paid to be a basketball player, that's kind of what I'm expecting. I'm expecting basketball results. And right now, Ben Simmons just hasn't provided that. And that's kind of something I'm curious to see whether or not Doc Rivers is going to do something about it. Because like I said, it would be really frustrating to see that you have a really good coach in Doc Rivers having to deal with guys like Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid who are maintenance, just like guys like Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. Especially with the Paul George part, we kind of know the rumors about him and Doc Rivers' relationship, but you know what? It is what it is. But I think the really frustrating part about it is going to be whether or not Doc Rivers can get Joel Embiid to come to practice, because that's another player that they're going to have to kind of focus on if he's going to be part of their future, is whether or not Doc Rivers can get Joel Embiid to come to practice, because that's kind of the reason why I think that Joel Embiid got out of shape. That's the reason why he hasn't played so well, is because he hasn't really focused on, one, the health part of it, and two, hasn't really focused on actually getting in basketball shape, because I feel like every time he plays on the court, he's out of shape. He's kind of got that Jokic build to him right now, where he's a little heavier than I think I would like him to be. Because I think for Joel Embiid, especially when it comes to the foot problems and when it comes to the knee problems, we kind of saw it. Like, he had knee problems because I felt like he was out of shape, didn't really take care of his body, and that's the reason why the 76ers are kind of in this predicament right now where, they've trusted the process for all this time. They thought they had the right pieces, and then ultimately at the end, they don't know what to do with those pieces. They don't know what to do with guys like Joel Embiid, with guys like Ben Simmons. You have Tobias Harris now, who's on the team, instead of keeping Jimmy Butler, who's in the NBA Finals right now. And that's kind of the decision that the 76ers decided to go in. And I think if the 76ers would have kept Jimmy Butler, I think that team would have been more lethal. It would have been more fun to watch. But of course they didn't, and now they kind of reap what they sown. And obviously, the Ben Simmons injury was a big one. And as much as I like to clown Ben Simmons, he's still a really good basketball player. Just the three-point shot is something that I question, and I hope that he corrects that. But still, it's kind of frustrating to see that coming from Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid. Is who are they going to be? Hey, what's up, Eoy? How you doing, man? So you said, what's up? It's weird not seeing him in Philly. I see Doc, I think Boston or with the Clippers. Yeah, Doc Rivers definitely kind of made his name stay, of course, in LA. I think with the two teams, not only the current team with Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, but also with Lob City. And I really think that, I think this was the right move for the 76ers. And I think it was the right move for the Clippers. You want to move on from Doc Rivers because Doc Rivers has stayed there for so long. He hasn't won you anything, and it's time to kind of move on and get to a new coach. And also for Doc Rivers, this is a brand new opportunity to prove yourself in the East now, which is going to be an easier way and road to get to the NBA Finals than going through the West. And I think Doc Rivers is going to realize that, he's going to have to add a lot of pieces to the 76ers team, in my opinion. I mean, I love Doc Rivers. I think he's a great coach, but at the same time, he failed in LA. And I hate to say that because I really like him as a coach. I really like him as a guy. But ultimately, the results speak for themselves. Blew 2 3-1 leads. Obviously, this one was more egregious because of the team that he had. And it just sucks to see that because, like I said, I like Doc Rivers. I like what he brings to the table. I like him as a coach. But ultimately, he didn't get the job done. And the 76ers are going to be signing him. And the Clippers are very impatient right now. Steve Ballmer, one of the richest owners in the world, doesn't want to see his team falter out before the Western Conference Finals. I think Doc Rivers would have kept his job if he would have been in the conference finals and lost. But ultimately, they lost in the second round to the Denver Nuggets, blowing a 3-1 lead, which is very disappointing to see from a LA Clippers team that was expected to win a championship or at least contend for a championship. And like I said, man, I think that the LA Lakers are just going to sweep. They're going to win, and it's going to be champagne, and it's going to be purple and gold all over LA as the Clippers go back to their basement and kind of deal with being the second fiddle in LA. And let me know in the comment section down below, or let me know in the live comments if you're watching right now, what do we make of the Doc Rivers hire? Are you a fan of it? Are you not a fan of it? I just think my only concern, like I said, is going to be the Ben Simmons, Joel Embiid fiasco, and who's going to be the star, who's going to be the alpha, who's going to be the person that the 76ers decide to build their franchise around. Because at this point, the process has really been a disappointment. Hasn't been able to keep the players. I thought that they really should have fired Brett Brown a long time ago, probably get a new guy in there. But they ended up keeping Brett Brown. And I think that if you keep having a coach like that, who will not really do much for you, then I think it's a bad move. And I'm glad that the 76ers learned their lesson. They fired Brett Brown finally. It was probably 2 years too late. And I think that now they're going to be looking at rebuilding again, which kind of sucks because we know that the 76ers are a good team on paper, but it just, when it comes out to playing on the court, it's a different and completely different story. But like I said, let me know about what you think about this LA Clippers hire. I think it's a great move for the 76ers to get him. I think it was a great move for the Clippers to fire him. It's a kind of win-win for both teams just because I think Doc Rivers has a new revitalized career in Philadelphia. Meanwhile, you have the Clippers who are going to be looking for their next coach, whether it's Tyronn Lue, whether it's Jason Kidd or whoever it's going to be. That's kind of for us to kind of look and decide. But let's move on to the next story that I have here to talk about. And that's, of course, dealing with Kemba Walker and what Danny Ainge said about Kemba Walker when he was in the bubble. So when it comes to this story, we see here that Boston Celtics GM says Kemba Walker was definitely not himself while in the bubble. This, of course, comes from Tim. Bond Temps. Danny Ainge said that his star point guard Kemba Walker was definitely not himself during the team stay inside the bubble at the Walt Disney World Resort. I wasn't there in the bubble, Ainge said at the end of the season following a conference call with the Celtics lost to the Miami Heat. I was watching from here and I could see even here before the bubble started, which is why he slowed down a bit, doing strength training stuff and trying to prepare himself for the playoff run and the intensity of a playoff run, but he was definitely not himself. In fairness to Kemba, he doesn't want to say that. He doesn't want to say our coaches. He doesn't want to say that to you, the media. He doesn't want to say that to me. I haven't heard one excuse from him, but watching the games, even the games we won, even the games where we played well, I could tell that it wasn't the same physicality as he was in October, November, and December. So we're trying to get that Kemba back. And kind of before I keep reading and kind of continue to read, I think this was a bad move on Danny Ainge to say that about Kemba Walker, only because what you're doing right now is you're building in a built-in excuse as to why Kemba Walker didn't play very well. I think Kemba Walker would admit himself. I think anybody would admit themselves that Kemba Walker was definitely not up to snuff this year when it came to the bubble. He definitely kind of slowed down a bit after the first round. He was really struggling in the Toronto series, and he definitely struggled in the Miami Heat series. Um, and unfortunately, that's just the way the cookie crumbles sometime. I mean, we kind of saw it when it came to Kemba Walker that we really should have saw um, a different Kemba Walker when it came to this. I think that this is kind of a lame built-in excuse that the Danny Ainge is trying to put out there. But I think now is the time, Danny Ainge, instead of talking about Kemba Walker, I think what you need to talk about is how are we going to get a superstar player to come to Boston? You know, we didn't make the deal for AD, fine. You know, you didn't want AD, you didn't think he would commit long term, and that's fine. But at the same time, I think you need to look at building a championship. I think you need to look at, you know, how can we get to a championship? And ultimately, we need to look more into how do we build a superstar team again, because I think that's what's going to get us over the hump. I think that's what's going to get us to actually do well in many of these games. It's going to get us to do well in just trying to get back to the NBA Finals, because, you know, it's been a while since we've been to the NBA Finals. I think the last time we were there was when we lost to the LA Lakers. And I think it's time we get back there. But the problem is and what I'm seeing often from us and also from everything else, is that we don't have a superstar player. Instead, we acquire assets. We have so many draft picks, and, you know, we claim that Danny Ainge was smart for doing that. He had so many assets. We could use it to trade. We could use it to, you know, actually acquire players. But instead of actually doing that, we haven't really done a good job of trading those assets and acquiring anything. You know, whether it was AD, whether it was Kevin Love back in the day, they need to do a better job of acquiring assets, because ultimately this is frustrating as a Celtics fan who wants to see Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown get to the NBA Finals along with Marcus Smart, but we ultimately haven't gotten that yet, and it's just frustrating to see that we haven't really traded anybody, we haven't done anything. Gordon Hayward is probably going to opt into his player contract because he's definitely not going to get $34 million from another team. And I think we need to look at making that trade and trading him away and getting a superstar, because ultimately that's what's going to win us basketball games, not the young players. Not this is an old man's league, right? You have to be very skilled. You have to be very well versed in basketball kind of veteranship. And right now, we're just not proving that right now. And it's frustrating to see that. It's frustrating to know that we could definitely be in the NBA Finals right now if we had a little bit of veteran presence, and if we had a third superstar who can really take over the middle. Like I said, I want a big man, whether it's Joel Embiid, if they're willing to trade him. I'm not sure now because of Doc Rivers' hire. But I would love for them to add those type of players, man. It's frustrating to see that we can't add those players onto our team. You know, like I said, I would take a Karl-Anthony Towns. I would take a Joel Embiid. I would take a Giannis. Even though I don't think Giannis is going to be coming to us, I would love to add one of those type of players to this roster. And unfortunately, we just haven't done it yet. And it just kind of sucks, in my opinion, to see that. But let's kind of also look at some stories along here as well. Like I said, I think it's a lame built-in excuse that they're doing for Kemba Walker. It's like, let Kemba Walker just say, you know what? It wasn't my series this year. Let me see if I can do a better job. Let me see if I can do something where I can become a very good player. It's just kind of frustrating to see that. And I'm hoping that we can see the Celtics finally get that superstar player that we deserve, that we need in order to win a championship and get to the NBA Finals. Kind of other news. Looks like Goran Dragic and Bam Adebayo are doubtful, which is going to be very sad, especially when it comes to Goran Dragic and Bam Adebayo, especially Goran Dragic as being the head of the snake, kind of the head of the operations for the Miami Heat. I think what sucks about this the most is that we really needed Goran Dragic to be in there for the Miami Heat even to have a chance to win a game against the LA Lakers. You know, we might see the LA Lakers take their foot off the gas, but still, even if you take your foot off the gas, you still don't have Goran Dragic, and Bam Adebayo is listed doubtful for game 2. And ultimately, game 2 is going to be the biggest decider for me, whether or not the Miami Heat can come back. I know it's only 2 games, but I think the Miami Heat game 2 is a must-win for the Miami Heat if they want to be competitive in this NBA Finals. But ultimately, I don't think that's going to be the case. We saw that Dragic has a torn plantar fascia in his foot. That is a big thing. I'm surprised he's doubtful. I'm sure he's out for tonight's game. Obviously tonight being Friday. And then Adebayo went under there to see a neck strain. I think both these guys are out. And if both those guys are out, you know, who are you going to start? Kelly Olynyk and Kendrick Nunn. I love Kendrick Nunn. I think Kendrick Nunn is going to be the guy. But what I get frustrated with is that I know that Kelly Olynyk is not the replacement that we need, that the Miami Heat need per se, because I had the Lakers winning this in a sweep, and I think it's still going to be a sweep. I think that the LA Lakers are just going to be doing their thing, and it kind of is what it is at this point. I think it's a moot point. The Miami Heat, let's buy them the champagne, let's buy them the brooms so they can help the Lakers celebrate. Let's get some Lakers brooms, man. Let's get some Lakers brooms. Let's get some champagne for them, because obviously it's going to be one of those situations where it's going to be an obvious sweep, and I don't see it anywhere else. And that obviously doesn't do well for the ratings, because we see here from the deadline that Game 1 of the 2020 NBA Finals had a 2.2 rating in the 18 to 49 demographic to go with a 5.31 million viewers overall. That is kind of clear and obvious, and I don't think it's because of the pandemic. I don't think it's anything like that. To be honest with you, I think the reason why it's down is because obviously of the tension that's going on around the world, especially in the US when it comes to the political stuff. And I think it also has to do with, of course, that it's the Miami Heat in the NBA Finals. I think that's the biggest reason why, because we know that the Miami Heat are not going to be competitive. We know that the Miami Heat are not going to be contenders in this playoff. And unfortunately, it sucks to say that, because I understand that I want to see them fight. I want to see a really good competitive game, but ultimately with the injuries gone, I'm wondering if tonight's game is going to be even lower in terms of viewership. It sucks to say that, because I think that the game is so beautiful. I love watching basketball, but ultimately, when you don't have the right competition in there, when you have the Miami Heat, who also lose their two best players, who are now going to be, playing some backups in those roles, it's just not going to be good for television. Whether it's football, whether it's basketball, whether it's baseball, no matter what sport it is, if you have your backups in and not your starter players, the ratings are going to be lower, because we know that no one wants to watch that type of basketball. No one wants to watch the Miami Heat with their backups play against the LA Lakers with Anthony Davis and LeBron James. Even though LeBron James is one of the biggest draws in the NBA history, other than Michael Jordan at this point in their careers, to me, it just sucks to see that, that this is the rating that they get, a 5.31. When we see here before that the Toronto Raptors and Golden State drew a 13.5, and the Warriors Cavaliers threw a 17.7. I think, as a lot of people can talk about that they love to see kind of they don't want to see the same kind of big superstars play each other again and again. But I think this Warriors Cavaliers ratings kind of says a different story. It says players, coaches, fans, no matter who it is, want to watch a heavyweight matchup. With the Golden State Warriors and their super team, with LeBron James and the Cavaliers, that's what drew such a great rating. And ultimately, like I said, I think the Miami Heat, without their star players, with the Miami Heat actually being in there and not like a well-known team like Giannis, of course the numbers are going to be down, and that sucks, because I think that we could see a definite improvement if we would see guys like Giannis in the game, if we would see guys like Jason Tatum that were playing, especially Giannis, man. I think if Giannis was in the NBA Finals, I think this would be a completely different story. And that's kind of it for like ratings wise. And I think one more thing to talk about before we sign off here is, of course, this story about LeBron James and Anthony Davis. We're not jealous of each other. Hang on, Sean. I'll answer your question in just 1 second. LeBron James asked about his relationship with Anthony Davis. I mean, Anthony Davis and LeBron James kind of have like this weird relationship. I think LeBron James is more of a mentor than like a friend or like a frenemy, compared to like guys like Kyrie Irving, who are a frenemy. We could talk about actually that as soon as we're done with this topic. And I'll get back down to Sean's comment. That's where I kind of get frustrated, or not frustrated. That's kind of where kind of talking about the Kyrie thing. We'll you know what? Let's talk about that later. Let's talk about this one right here. So LeBron James was asked about his relationship with Anthony Davis. We're not jealous of each other. I believe jealousy creeps into a lot, and that's a lot. That's absolutely contrary to of what we are. James and Davis share an agency with Clutch Sports. I just think that Anthony Davis is more like a younger brother to LeBron James. I think Anthony Davis sees LeBron James as like an older brother who will guide him the right way, who will tell him, this is where I need to go. This is, this is the moves you need to make. But I definitely don't see this as a jealousy thing. I think this is more of a kind of rebuttal against what Kyrie Irving said in his podcast. I think the podcast really was a deep shot at LeBron James, and we'll talk about that as soon as I answer Sean's question. But to kind of ultimately wrap this story up with Anthony Davis, yeah, they're not jealous of each other because, like I said, I see Anthony Davis as more as a younger brother, LeBron James more of the older brother. And I think LeBron James also kind of takes a shot back at Kyrie Irving, saying that he's not jealous. He's not mad at anybody. He's just looking to win games. Meanwhile, you got Kyrie Irving, who's kind of talking his mouth and saying that he's the best player. And so, it is what it is. So let's see here. Does Trump take credit for people not watching? He says they're all boycotting sports because of kneeling and social. See, I don't think it's the social justice thing. I think that's kind of like a right-leaning talk. I think it's fine. It's your product. I mean, if the NBA wants to do it, if the NFL wants to do it, if all sports want to do it, I say why not? Obviously, I'm not black. It's black players feel like this is a really big thing, and I'm gonna listen and I'm gonna understand that. So I'm not gonna be upset if they decide to do the social justice stuff. What people that, are, whether they're Trump supporters or people that want to keep the sports out of politics, I think it's kind of like in movies. I think it's kind of like in everything else. They want that stuff in there because that's kind of the message that they want to send across, right? For the players in the NBA and the NFL, the MLB, it's the Black Lives Matter stuff, and that's 100% understandable. They want people to be aware of it. They want people to understand, like, this is our power, our voice that we're using, our platform to do that. It would just be like any other, like CNN or Fox News or whoever whoever, even Sports Center and all this stuff. I mean, it's up to you. I think that ultimately it's going to come down to, like I said, I think the ultimate reason why the ratings are so down in the NBA right now is just due to the fact that it's a really bad finals matchup. This is probably one of LeBron's easiest finals that we've ever seen in his career. And even then, it's just, you also have two players that are out for the team. It is what it is at that point. I think that's kind of the main reason as to why no one's really watching the NBA finals right now. But ultimately as well, it kind of says they're all boycotting. I mean, it's just kind of dumb. Let them do what they need to do. I don't feel like it's something that you need to die over, like, or I don't know what the term or like the analogy is. It's like something about a sword. Like, it's not the sword you die on, but it's definitely just let it be. Like, if they want to say, like, this is the kind of injustices that they're feeling, let them have that opinion. I'm not here to stop them. I'm not here to say, no, you shouldn't do that. And again, I think the real reason as to why the ratings were so down is because it's the Miami Heat versus LeBron James. And we know that the Miami Heat are not the strongest team. I think players and everybody would love to see Giannis in this matchup or any other type of that stuff. Hill to die on. Thanks, Sean. It's not the hill to die on. I don't think that's the hill that people that are kind of on the keep the politics out of sports. I don't think this is the hill to die on. I think there's many more important things. I mean, at the end of the day, obviously the Black Lives Matter stuff and everything that's going on in our world matters a lot more than a game of basketball between the Miami Heat and the LA Lakers. And I do think that's kind of part of the reason as to why there's not a lot of sports watching, is because everybody is so tense and on edge about what's going on in this political atmosphere that's kind of creating tensions from everybody, whether people were political or not. That's kind of something that we're seeing. And I don't want this to be too political because obviously we're talking sports from my perspective, of course. And I think that I'm willing to let the players have their voice. Or not willing, but it's their platform, it's their choice. I'm not going to be upset. I'm not going to force them. I'm not going to be like, I'm boycotting because they decided to do that. It's their platform, it's their opinion, and if that's what they want, it is what it is. You're going to have to respect it, and that's the kind of the way the cookie crumbles. You're going to have to respect the opinion of it. But again, guys, I think the reason why Game 1 drew so many low numbers, I guess I shouldn't say so many because that just sounds idiotic to say. The reason why the numbers were so low, that's the correct way to say it, is because honestly, it's the Miami Heat, and the Miami Heat lost their two stars. The Miami Heat, they kind of saw the blowout. I'm sure people saw it on Twitter and were like, oh, let me check out the game. Oh, wait, this game is a blowout. Why would I want to check it out? So I think that's kind of the main reason why. And let me kind of find this Kyrie Irving story, because I think this is a very interesting story that, let me, if I can spell Kyrie Irving right. Let's see here. Let's view all. Let's kind of find the story here really quick. Okay, so this is For the Win USA Today. Hopefully they'll let me kind of look at it. Wait, I can continue with ad blocker. Let me do that. There you go, babe. Yeah, Gabby's right on that one. It is what it is. That's kind of the 2020 saying ever. But let's go to this Kyrie Irving story, because I think this one is a little juicier. You know, the drama, we're all here for it. Gosh dang it, Sean. Okay, here we go. So let's talk about this story here. So the story here is that Kyrie Irving denies he was taking shots at LeBron James with Kevin Durant quotes. So this is, of course, what the story came down to. But following up a video, Kyrie Irving denied it. He basically said that, spoken to Kevin Durant about how for the first time in Irving's career, he'll have someone that he can trust who can make the big shots. I think that's kind of the biggest, that's the biggest shot, right? The biggest shot was that Kyrie Irving said that finally, for the first time in his career, he has someone that can make the big shots. And I don't think that these people understand, you know, just how big LeBron James hit some big jumpers in his career. And I think that Kyrie Irving is misguided in this. And I know that Kyrie Irving wants to deny it, but every time I see Kyrie Irving kind of talk about something, whether he's talking about, you know, for the NBA, whether he's talking about for LeBron James, or whether he's talking about for his teammate Kevin Durant, or whether he's talking about his head coach Steve Nash, I feel like he's always got to say something that divides the room. And that's kind of a thing that I want Kyrie Irving to get rid of, is to kind of talk about stuff that makes it very controversial. I think Kyrie Irving needs to learn and have a PR team, someone that kind of says, you know what, this is what you need to say, or hey, Kyrie Irving, if you're going to talk about this, make sure not to bring this up, because you're going to talk about something that's going to be very controversial. And again, Kyrie Irving, to be honest, I really hate this excuse. I mean, let's kind of look at what his excuse was. Let me see if you guys can hear it. Okay, so here we go. I don't think the audio played, so I'm just going to kind of read the quotes out. So, why must it always be brother against brother? Why? He wondered. If I'm addressing anyone, I'll say their name. Don't listen to the false narratives. Let people live their lives. He continued. It's just a game. Talk about the art. Talk about the sport. We can talk openly. We can talk freely. He then went on to say the media was entertained and he wouldn't let it push me against anybody anymore at any point. So I think the biggest thing when it comes to this, guys, is the fact that I think Kyrie Irving, again, doesn't understand kind of the perception of the media. You know, the media will always run with a narrative. They'll always run with a story. You know, this happens in sports. It happens in politics. It happens in whatever newsroom you're in. Whether you're in ESPN, whether you're in your local paper for your high school, whether you're local paper for your college. I just think what's frustrating about it is the fact that Kyrie Irving just doesn't understand the room. He doesn't read the room. He doesn't understand everything. And so what I want Kyrie Irving to understand is that LeBron James has hit some clutch shots in his career. You know, you have played with someone in that perspective. And, you know, we're not the ones saying these quotes where you're talking about Kevin Durant is the best, you know, it's someone that's finally on my level. It's like, Kyrie Irving, when you had my Boston Celtics as kind of the leader, and I called you the Nightwing because you wanted to be your own leader, you wanted to be your own guy, when I called you that, I expected some better results. And so far, when you were kind of the sole guy or the only guy, you've only created more controversy, you've only created more headaches, and you got a coach fired because of it, because I'm sure Kenny Atkinson didn't want to deal with that. And Jacque Vaughn luckily didn't have to deal with the kind of the pain and the animosity that you would be feeling on your players. I mean, you tried to cancel the NBA season for a good cause, I will say that. But at the same time, I didn't really agree with his opinion on the NBA canceling the whole season when you can have your platform to use to talk about the injustices in the world. You can talk about kind of the message that you want to send across. But if, like Sean says, like if it's going to be a Lakers Brooklyn final next year, I would love that. I think they're still a piece or two away from being finals contenders or even being competitive in the finals. I think that when it comes to looking at the Brooklyn Nets roster, they need to make some trades, they need to make some moves, because there's a lot of guys on that team that need the ball. There's a lot of guys in that team that aren't really more spot up shooters. So you need to make sure that you get those spot up shooters, get those guys that can really help your team out. But at the end of the day, like I said, what I find frustrating about Kyrie Irving's comments is that he doesn't really read the room. I still think to this day, whether he and LeBron James are friends or not, he still disrespects LeBron in many different ways. Whether it's pettiness, whether it's jealousy, animosity, I don't know what it is, but Kyrie Irving needs to get over it. I would love to help him build a bridge and get over it. Let's get him on the podcast, Sean. Let's talk to him. Let's get an interview with Kyrie Irving. Let's get LeBron James on the line, and we'll kind of hash things out. Put a like in the comment section. Put a like in the video if you want that to happen. Let's get Kyrie Irving and LeBron James on the show and kind of get them to talk about it. Kyrie want to cancel LeBron. Want to get a ring. Easy to call when you're injured. Yeah, I agree with you, Sean. When that whole situation happened, I can't remember if I made a video or I may have made one, but I didn't post it. What I talked about that one is the fact that I think that Kyrie Irving kind of saw the writing on the wall that the Lakers were just that good, even though they struggled a little bit at the beginning of the bubble. Like I talked about many times before, they just have much more camaraderie. They have much more togetherness than I think any team we have seen before, especially in the bubble. And I think Kyrie Irving kind of wanted to stop it. He realized that he wasn't going to be able to play in the bubble. He realized that he wasn't going to be able to be a part of it. Because like you said, I think if Kyrie Irving was going to be part of the bubble, if he was going to be part of playing the games, then I could definitely see Kyrie Irving not say a word about not canceling the season. But ultimately, in the end, we're seeing that LeBron James is getting, kind of clout. The LeBron James clout is being used in Kyrie Irving saying that, and it just sucks to see because, like I said, I think Kyrie Irving's a good player, but I just think that someone needs to take the mic away from him. Mute his mic, whatever you have to do, mute it, take away his phone, take away the podcast. I think this was either Kevin Durant's podcast, which obviously he just started, which, it is what it is. Every player now has a podcast. I have a podcast. It doesn't, hit that subscribe button if you are enjoying the podcast, that is, by the way, shameless plug. But yeah, I do think that it's kind of unfortunate that Kyrie Irving had to say that. I understand what he's trying to do. He's trying to hype up his teammate. I understand that part of it. But at the same time, you're taking another shot at LeBron James, and it's frustrating to see that you keep doing this every time, whether you're in Boston, whether you're in Cleveland, whether you're in now Brooklyn. It doesn't matter where you're at. You keep taking shots at LeBron, and I feel like Kyrie Irving is a little bit more passive aggressive than I think he likes to lead on. I think he would love to leave kind of the clues and do the things that LeBron James did when the Cavaliers first formed. When we talked about that situation with LeBron James and Kevin Love, are you in, are you out? I think Kyrie Irving kind of took some of those lessons of pettiness because we know that LeBron James can be at times, especially to some of his players and friends. And we're kind of seeing that right now with Kyrie Irving. It's just being petty to former teammates and really should just let it go, man. I understand you wanted to stay in Cleveland. I know you probably want to be a Cleveland Cavalier for life. But ultimately, you went to Boston. You failed there. You're now in Brooklyn. We'll see what happens. We'll see what the results are. But I'm hoping that it's a lot better than it was for us because unfortunately and frustratingly, it was frustrating to see that the Boston Celtics couldn't really do anything with you and really kind of create a superstar team. And I think you would have been a great asset for us, but ultimately you failed for us. And I think that's really it. I mean, I don't think that there's any other storylines to talk about. Kind of see here, Alvin Gentry could join the 76ers staff. So we know that the Pelicans are going to be looking for a new head coach. I think that's really it. I mean, let's check ESPN really quick, see if there's any stories here. I don't think there is. Yeah, doubtful. We talked about that one already. Irving KD says Nets coaching will be collaborative. Let's kind of read this. I heard about it, but didn't really kind of read onto it and kind of learn anything from it. So let's read here. So the Brooklyn Nets named Steve Nash the head coach, but stars Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant see Nash as more of a collaborative role and not as a head coach of top-down leadership. I don't really see us having a head coach, Kyrie Irving said. KD could be the coach. I could be the coach some days. no Kyrie Irving, no Kevin Durant. That's not how it works. There's a reason why, as much as I despise Frank Vogel sometimes, I hate that Andre. It's all right, Sean. Andre Iguodala is not going to win a championship. They're going to lose in 4 games. We'll even get Andre. We'll send Andre Iguodala some champagne. We'll send him some brooms so he can feel a little bit better about himself and the Miami Heat as they're going to get in a sweep. But kind of going back to this story, as I get distracted in the chat, I don't understand this sort of deal when it comes to collaborative effort and coaching. There's a reason why Frank Vogel, as much as I despised him at times because his lineups and his matchups were so horrible, there's a reason why he's the head coach. There's a reason why Eric Spoelstra is the head coach. There's a reason why many of these guys that LeBron James previously had were head coaches. I mean, I don't see Steve Kerr as being a collaborative coach. And the fact that I think Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant see Steve Nash as a collaborative coach, that to me is just asinine. I understand that the game will always be with star players. Star players will always run this league because we see that they're so effective. We see that they are able to control games. They're able to win you games. They're able to do a lot of things. But the coaches have to put those players in the right situations. And Steve Kerr did that time and time again for a player like Kevin Durant, did it for a player like Steph Curry, did it for a player like Klay Thompson. And the fact that you think that Steve Nash is going to be a collaborative coach is laughable because, like I said, it needs to be your head coach that kind of demands the presence, that demands everything, because really the head coach's role in the NBA is to manage egos. I mean, we see a lot of players not being able to kind of, some of them feel like they need to take more shots. Some of them feel like they need more touches in the paint. They feel like they need everything. And right now the head coach's job is to make sure that they keep those players in check, keep them in line and say, hey, look, there's a bigger picture. They're like the manager of their own, like Walmart, manager of their own Target, manager of their own Chick-fil-A, manager of their own Starbucks, McDonald's, whatever franchise you want to use. That's the head coach right now. And of course you have the star employee that does everything and that gets everything, that gets everything for you. And that's kind of like the star players and the superstar players. And so those managers have to deal with those players and realize, like, look, this is the way it has to be done. This is the way we have to do it. And the fact that Kyrie Irving says that it'll be a collaborative effort, it's just kind of, is not really what I agree with. Durant followed up by agreeing with Irving, calling it a collaborative effort, and naming assistant coach and former interim coach Jack Vaughn as someone who could fill in the role any given day. Yes. When it comes to coaching, you obviously need a big staff because sometimes your voice can get lost in the mud. When it comes to that, Kyrie Irving thinks he's LeBron. LeBron is the only good. Yeah, I mean, that's 100% right, Sean. And I understand, it's kind of going back to my point. You have so many assistant coaches. You have so many, kind of scouts and trainers and everybody on your staff. You obviously want all of them to have a say because sometimes players can lose your voice. We talked about this with kind of high school basketball too. Our head coach sometimes is like, you know what? I think it's better if they hear it from like our assistant coaches and say like, this is what you need to do and this is what needs to get done quickly. And I think that I understand the point that they're trying to make, but I don't think that the star players can really do that really well besides LeBron James. I think LeBron James' IQ is out of this world when it comes to basketball and everything else. His IQ, especially on the court, is just amazing. And the way that he's able to see the court, the way that he's able to shift defenses and be able to kind of counteract that really quickly, I just think it really allows LeBron James to be a coach on the floor. Rajon Rondo, the same thing. Kyrie Irving, not so much because he's more of a shot-creating guard, and Kevin Durant is more of an all-around player, but definitely not to the ability of a guy like LeBron James or any of these other players. And so when I kind of see this, I don't think that that's kind of the right way and the right approach for the 76ers, the Brooklyn Nets. And so I think you also have to especially if you're going to decide that Steve Nash is our head coach, let him have the biggest voice in the room. He's brought in there for a reason, whether we agree with it or not. The Nets brought him in for a reason, and let Steve Nash decide and understand how his team is going to be, what's going to happen with this team. And I think that's going to be a much better effort than saying, oh, it's a collaborative effort. Kyrie Irving can have his say, Kevin Durant can have his say, Jack Vaughn can have his say. But ultimately, at the end of the day, most of the majority of the talking has to come from has to come from Steve Nash. Steve Nash is the biggest voice in the room. He's the head coach, and you're gonna have to respect the head coach, whether you like him as a coach or whether you dislike him as a coach. And so, like I said, I don't agree with what Kyrie Irving said here. It's not a collaborative effort. It's all about the head coaching staff and the assistant coaches and the film guy. It's all about those guys coming together and creating a game plan so that each and every night the Brooklyn Nets can successfully run plays for guys like Kevin Durant, can run plays for Kyrie Irving, and can get them in the right positions to score the rock. And that's kind of going to be it, guys, for today's video. Really appreciate you guys coming in and watching us, watching the stream. I know it was kind of a short one today, 40 minutes. Probably won't be streaming tonight after the NBA Finals because I think that the results are going to be the same. So I probably will stream Sunday night talking about it. But anyway, guys, like I said, my name is Bernie. Thank you once again for joining me here on The Charge. Of course, guys, we have so many different contents out here. We have our NFC, AFC prediction videos on all the conferences. We'll kind of do an update on it as soon as we can. We'll also do a Premier League update. We have that video out with my boy Sean, with my boy PM. So make sure you guys go and check out that video as well. But anyway, guys, like I said, my name is Bernie. Thanks once again for joining, and I'll catch you guys on the next video. Peace.